So, being a chem tutor for around 3 years now, I've sort of built a bit of an understanding about some of the most common mistakes that students tend to make. And these are some of the most high yield things that I've seen throughout the year, and what strategies I think are best implementable to actually destroy these issues. So, there are four cardinal things, and I'll sort of break this up into those four areas. The first thing that I'd really say is that students just do not know the keywords, not knowing what words are necessary for your responses. The second one is really going to be silly mistakes, not knowing the common trip-ups and falling into those common trip-ups. And then the third and fourth is really going to be about looking for certain question words. And the fourth is exam technique. Let's start with number one. So when it comes to keywords, what you're really talking about is knowing every single word that you need to get all 4 marks or all 3 marks. Chemistry is very much an expression-based subject. You need to know exactly what to say and how to say it. And in order to, get a very solid understanding about how you find keywords, I recommend you watch the blog on keywords, but you need to have a really good understanding of what words are necessary. For example, when we look at rates of reactions and equilibrium, those responses that you craft when you talk about Le Chatelier, when you talk about collision theory, all of those are crafted with a really solid understanding of what keywords are necessary. And so including those keywords is an essential part of your answer. Now let's talk about silly mistakes. Silly mistakes is really two-part in chemistry. One is identifying your own silly mistakes, and two is really navigating how you can stop those from happening. In my experience, most silly mistakes that I see in chemistry come from either missing values, so really calculation-based, and two, missing keywords in the question, right? And this is going to kind of bleed into my third point, but it's like, for example, when you look at cells, there's this really easy thing that you can mix up recharge, discharge. You can mix up alkaline and acidic conditions. You can mix up units, right? You can mix up hours, seconds when you talk about time and Faraday's constant calculations. So having an intricate understanding about how you can make those small nuanced errors is really important, and avoiding them is really all about bringing conscious attention to those errors, writing them down, and then finding ways to just kind of log them and not make them again. The last technique is really exam technique. People struggle on exam technique in two really fundamental bases. One is time. How do they pace themselves when they do an exam? How do you go about finishing the exam? And the second aspect really comes to the checking mechanism, right? Have you checked your answer, and do you have a solid approach to checking your answers? Let's talk about pacing first. People really struggle with pacing because pacing is really about calibrating yourself according to your time. For instance, if you know that you have to do 50 marks in 1 hour, I can kind of roughly calculate that if I can do 1 mark per minute, that's going to be pretty helpful, right? And so you're pacing yourself according to that. And usually what I say is you want to kind of overpace yourself. You want to work slightly faster than what the time allows. And what I would usually recommend is doing each short answer question in about 10 minutes. And that would kind of help because each short answer question is usually around 10 marks in chemistry. And that would be the way that I would calibrate myself. And usually that would allow me enough time to check over my answers at the end. So that was the pacing aspect. Checking really comes down to, like, after I finished my exam, how am I going to check my answers? And usually I would do this in a couple of different ways. When it comes to checking any calculation-based questions, my usual approach is to just do the question again. It's very tricky to find your own calculation errors, especially if it's like a negative or a positive. I would just do it again. But with any expression or written out sort of answer, my approach would usually be, did I include all my keywords? Did I notice any nuances? Did I maybe look if it was recharge or discharge? Did I make any of those common silly mistakes, right? And so having all of these is going to help you create a very solid approach to how to do chemistry, and you guys are going to do amazing.